Call this special council meeting to order. Madam Clerk, the roll call.
All members of council are present, your worship, with the exception of Councillor Noyes.
Thank you. There are no announcements nor addenda to this agenda. Are there any declarations of pecuniary interest? Notice of upcoming public meetings, very reminiscent of what I announced earlier this evening under council and committee. Both a budget, general levy and general capital budget bylaw to be entertained next Monday, March the 25th during our regular council meeting, and proposed changes to the zoning bylaw relative to shipping and cargo containers. There'll be a public meeting Monday, April the 8th, here in the council chambers at 6 p.m. There are no presentations or delegations this evening. We have a consent agenda. Is there anyone that wishes anything removed from the consent agenda? I'd like 7.21, which relates to the regional water and wastewater matter, removed from the agenda. So, Councillor Lubert, you have the resolution to deal with the consent agenda. Could you read that and exclude 7.21? I guess it is. 0.2.
Okay, thank you very much, Mayor Redikoff.
It's
Moved by
I.
my-
It's I. 7.2I.
Aye, yeah. Yeah, you want me to move forward?
Yes, please.
Okay, moved by myself and seconded by Councilor McDermott. That council approves the consent agenda items as recommended.
Are there any questions or comments with respect to the items in the consent agenda? Councillor Dubino.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. I think it's 7.2J, the provincial or the Niagara Region Provincial Review of Regional Government. I'm just curious. I know the region is taking this matter, the bull by the horn, so to speak, and I certainly appreciate that, and I think it's great. I'm just wondering if there's any plans to involve local councils, local councillors, even the public within the lower tier municipalities as part of this process. Just I know the media has been picking it up, and certainly we're hearing about it in the community. I just want to find out if we're going to be involved in that process as well.
This initiative actually arises out of a couple of meetings that the mayors have had. One, just the mayors, one including a representative of the chair. And at the first meeting, as I've reported to you and I've reported to our regional councillor, the mayors had decided on a unified approach with respect to the province's review of regional government, among other areas in Niagara. And so we've moved forward with respect to that. All 12 municipalities and the region appear to be on board with that. The second meeting that we had was a teleconference, and during that we discussed the need to make sure that our message was crystal clear to the provincial government. And so the mayors decided to request that the region be the clearinghouse essentially for arranging a communications capacity with respect to this issue, to make sure that it was clear what our message was, that message was being delivered in a concise fashion to the government, and that the municipalities could take advantage of some professional advice relative to what kind of public consultations we would have, how we go about that, so that there will at least be a level of uniformity in what we're doing going forward. So this is very much an initiative that involves all 12 municipalities and the region. That in itself, we believe, sends a positive message because it shows that what we believe the government should do, which is continue with a modified two-tier system because of the lack of scale or critical mass in Niagara, that this is the best approach, and it's something that hopefully will bear fruit. We understand that there will need to be change. We understand that there are some services that can be realigned, some up to the region, some down to the municipalities. There can be greater sharing of services and programming, which is occurring now, but there can be greater opportunities. So we've got some recommendations with respect to that. So I hope that answers your question for the time being.
I'm I'm good with that, and certainly I appreciate you keeping us all apprised on this process. It's something very important that could have a very real impact on Fort Erie, and I certainly hope as this process moves forward that we'll continue to have the opportunity to, convey how we feel about this issue to the province, and that it also includes local input and, essentially communication with residents here in Fort Erie as well. Because regardless of, as much as I think the region is, certainly taking this forward and moving in a way that, is beneficial to all the municipalities, I think it goes without saying that there's a certain level of, rightfully or wrongly, a certain level of distrust among certain residents in Fort Erie. So I certainly hope we have the opportunity to deal with this also at a local level as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's fully the intention. Are there any other questions? Councillor Luberts and then Councillor McDermott.
Yes, thank you very much, Mayor Redekop. I just had a couple questions on the region's natural environment work program, item D.
Yes.
And when I read through the report, and I mean, we're only receiving it for information, but they talk about a few different things. And on page 2 of the report is one of them, and they talk about the natural environment planning is highly integrated with agricultural system planning, right? And then it goes on, it mentions the natural environment as well. And then on or page 2, I guess that was page 1 of the report, page 2 of the report, it goes on to say, the third paragraph, it talks about there's different parts of it, but there's the last sentence, the remaining 4 are generally classified as resource or environment related, like aggregates, climate change, agricultural, and natural environment again. And then they go on about the scope. In the scope, they mention stakeholders. I would like to know who they have listed as stakeholders, because I don't see it here in the report. And I'm curious because I want to know if the local environmental advisory committees are a stakeholder. And I'm wondering if environmental groups such as maybe Burt Miller Group or Friends of Fort Erie's Creek are part of that. They do mention NPCA, but I don't know that NPCA covers all environmental issues.
I think that they are, Councillor Luberts, but I'm going to go to Mr. Brady, who will know.
Thank you for your assurance. It
was just a stab.
All of the groups that you mentioned, all the public groups that you mentioned, Councillor Luberts, are part of the group. I reviewed their list not too long ago. The Environmental Advisory Committee wasn't on it at the time. I've advised the region that they should specifically put the Fort Erie's Environmental Advisory Committee on that list. I understand they have. So the Friends of Fort Erie Creek and others are on the list at the present time.
And have they been receiving correspondence all along with this? Because this has been going on for a year almost now, right?
Mr. Brady?
Through to Councillor Luberts, no, they have not. The technical work has been underway at the region with their consultant, and now they're about to go into a phase of reaching out to environmental groups.
Okay, and then if I may, Mayor Redekop, on page 3, it says that a consulting team has already been retained. Can we find out who that consulting team is?
We can find that out if we don't know now, Mr. Brady.
Yeah.
Yes, I can let you know that the consultant that's been hired is a consultant by the name of North South Environmental. They've been retained by the region for
Was it?
North South Environmental.
North-south?
north-south. And they've been retained by the region for, I'm going to say, close to a year now.
Okay, and, yeah, I think that's it. Thank you very much, Mayor Redekop.
Thank you. Councilor McDermott.
Yes, Your Worship, I want to go back to Councilor Dubino's questions with regards to the region and governance. I don't know if I'm real happy that, you know, the mayors are working together on trying to find plans on governance when, in fact, it's really the municipal council's role to share their thoughts with the mayor before the mayor can actually deliver Fort Erie's thoughts on the matter. I'm certain that people in this community wouldn't want to take away the closest form of government that they have, the one that's hands-on, the one that's with the grassroots, the ones where you call your counselor and they actually come to your house or send an email and they almost answer you immediately. I don't know why people would even encourage that sort of stuff, to be quite frank. I mean, there's so much wrong with some of the stuff that's coming out of the region right now, I can hardly stand it. When it comes to the idea that we would change our way of firefighting in this community, that would just drive me around the bend. And it scares me, to be honest with you. So I kind of think that while the mayor is all well and good sitting around talking about what they're thinking, we're the ones on the hot seat. Although we're not overstaffed here. I mean, there's 7 of us sit around the table. The region, you have 36 people. And I wonder how that works. So I think governance starts at home. And I think we are going to have a discussion relatively soon to explain our position, not only to the region, but to the premier of this province on how we feel about this. So it's my hope that while all these discussions are taking place, I hope they're not taking place in a vacuum where we're not apprised of everything that goes on there, because this is a very important, if not the most important issue that we're going to deal with in some time. And I haven't really had a chance to gather all my thoughts about this, but I'm sure that there could be some very wholesome debate about how we as a municipality that has been amalgamated once before, not only through the municipal role, but through the hospital role. And we've always ended up at the short end of the stick. And if I'm sitting on the council, I do not want to shortchange the taxpayers. And I don't want to shortchange them on the fact that they have councilors close to them right here. And I don't think they would like to sit in line at the region with 36 councilors waiting to get on the agenda. So I'm just hoping, Your Worship, that you give us that opportunity for that input and that discussion so that you can share the thoughts of your council at the region.
So Councilor McDermott, I know that you don't intend to imply that I haven't been keeping all of you fully apprised of what's been going on, because I have. I've sent you emails that have had attachments to them, and I've indicated to you after each meeting that I've had with the mayors what has gone on, what we have discussed, and what it is that we're proposing in terms of a unified front. Email is a two-way communication facility. I send out information. If any of you have information you want to send back to me or you want to question me, you all have my email address, you have my telephone number, you know where I work, so that this is my effort to make sure that I have the benefit of what your thoughts are and that you understand what is going on. This letter from the region is designed specifically to ensure that there is a public process going forward with respect to this, and each municipality, the council of each municipality has the opportunity to consider whether they want to participate in this effort, a joint effort, to make sure that the provincial government hears loud and clear what it is that we want going forward in terms of any changes the Premier might have in mind. I couldn't agree with you more on your comments about the proximity of local government to the taxpayers and the importance of elected representatives. And that's a key value that all of the mayors have shared, and I'm sure it's reflective of their councils throughout. And although this letter on our agenda comes from the region, it was designed as a mechanism for making sure that we have one source, which is the CAOs, to put together a program where we can hire communications firm in order to make sure that, as I said before, we have a clear message, that clear message is delivered in a concise fashion, and it's reflective of what the municipalities are expecting in terms of Niagara going forward. There could be, who knows right now what's in the mind of the Premier with respect to Niagara or any of the other 8 regions or counties that are under review. We just don't know, but we want to make sure that we're not taking any chances. Councillor Butler.
Thank you. I just wanted to ask a question with respect to the 7.2H, I think it is, isn't it, under correspondence, with respect to the waste management services. And I noticed that they have an increase of $35,000 that they're passing throughout the municipalities. And I just wanted to state for the record that I object to that. So I think they've taken enough of our money, and they had found some savings the last couple of years, and I think that they should be able to absorb that cost themselves.
Fair enough. Any other questions, Councillor, before I go back to Councillor Luberts? Anybody that hasn't spoken yet? Councillor Luberts?
Yes, thank you very much, Mayor Redekop. I just want to bring it to the attention to our clerk correction in the minutes for the SPCA.
Okay.
And I called the manager of the SPCA and notified her of the mistake. It shows in there that there's regrets from Dr. King. And then later it shows that Art King called the meeting to order. And Art King and Dr. King are the same person. So the meeting was called to order by Julie Ayers. So if we could make that correction, and I'll notify the SPCA as well.
Right, that's where that should be corrected. Okay. Any other questions or comments with respect to the items in the consent agenda? Mr. Brady, I had a question with respect to the Niagara Region's request for comments with respect to the revised exemption policies for their ROPA number 15. Are we going to be sending in any comments?
Through you, I have sent some comments of my own already on that. I've sat through a number of meetings on it. I think it's better than it is, but it's not far enough. And I've suggested to them that they need to continue to think about that, and they have an email to that effect from me.
Good, thank you. There are no other questions or comments. I'll call the question. All those in favor of the consent agenda as amended? None opposed. That is carried. Councillor Luberts, could you put item 7.2I on the floor, please?
Yes, thank you very much, Mayor Redekop. Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor McDermott that the consent agenda, item 7.2I.
Yes,
Yeah.
thank you. Madam Chair, who's the acting clerk, acting mayor? She's not here. Who's next in line to the throne? How about if I just hand the chair to Councillor Butler? Just so that I can comment on this. This is the region's water and wastewater budget, and I just wanted to make it clear that this budget came in at 5.15% increase, which put pressure on our water and sewer budget. We have ended up with 3.9 or thereabouts. primarily because of the fact that 60% of our bill is from the region. I voted in opposition to the bulk of these recommendations because I wasn't satisfied that the increases were necessary. The regional staff is now at a point where they want to institutionalize increases for water and sewer over the next several years, which will effectively result in combined increases of about 5% over the next several years. It's reminiscent of when I was elected at the end of the last century, and the region at that point in time was going to do the same thing. They wanted to institutionalize multi-year budget increases without real consideration of what the actual costs were. So I just wanted to make that clear that I did not support this. I don't think it's necessary, and I want the public to be aware that it does have a significant impact on the water and sewer rates that we as a local council have to pass.
Thank you, Your Worship. Does any other member of council have any questions or comments that they'd like to add to that? Councillor Dubineau?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair, and I thank you very much, Mayor Redekop, for bringing that up at the region. I think it goes without saying that water rates are a point of contention within Fort Erie here. Some of the reasons are legitimate, and other ones are due to infrastructure-related pressures that we have to deal with. But when it comes down to it, the dollars and the cents is that, you know, our water bills are what they are. I just want to point out, with regard to multi-year increases and the danger in that, I received an article from someone the other day outlining what happened in Bancroft, Ontario, when water rates there went through the roof due to infrastructure demands. And over the course, I think it was over 3 years, they ended up with something in the 60% increase range. And people there now are paying $3,000 plus a year for water. Now, these are municipalities in the province that people now have to decide whether they can afford food or medicine or to pay their water bill. So we need to be very, very careful that any spending at the local level as well as the region is absolutely necessary for the maintenance of our infrastructure and to ensure that we have clean and safe drinking water. Beyond that, I appreciate everything the mayor is doing to kind of deal with this at the regional level, because I have great concerns about that as well. And I appreciate you mentioning this and bringing it up, because it can be a lot worse, and we need to be very, very careful going forward that we are smart about doing this.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other councillors? Councillor Luberts?
Yes, thank you very much, Madam Chair. Just looking or listening to what our mayor had to say, that, and Mayor Redekop, you indicated that you didn't support this at the region level, and I'm going to recommend that we don't receive it from the region, and I'm not going to support it. No, well, I'm behind you, Mayor Redekop.
I think we have to receive it. They've sent it. I think we have to
No,
receive it.
that's why we're here. We decide what we have. And we just send it back and tell them to do a better job.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Luberts. Any other comments? Then I'll call the question. All those in favor? That carries. And those opposed, one.
I'll pass that on. I'll tell them that we didn't want to receive it. Okay. Okay. That takes us to new business inquiries. We've got a few resolutions. Councillor Dubineau, you have the next one that relates to the Senior Citizens Advisory Committee.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Butler, that Council accepts the resignation of Carol Faraday from the Senior Citizens Advisory Committee, and further, that Council directs staff to proceed with filling the vacancy in accordance with the bylaw.
Are there any questions or comments? All those in favor? None opposed, that is carried. Councillor Zanko, you have the next resolution.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor McDermott, that Council accepts the resignation of Helena Cacone from the Waverly Beach Park Ad Hoc Committee.
Are there any questions or comments? Counselor Zanko.
I have just a question. I thought that we also made recommendation to fill the opening on this.
Madam Clerk?
The reason why that second recommendation isn't present is because the ad hoc committees are not part of our council and committee structure. And I have spoken to the staff liaison and suggested, as we do to all committees, that they, if they wish to replace that individual, that they self-solicit. It's usually very helpful.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions? All those in favor of the resolution? That is carried. And Counselor Butler, you have the next resolution.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Dubenow that council appoints Mark Newman, Habitat for Humanity, Niagara representative to the Affordable Housing Committee for the period ending November 14th, 2022.
Are there any questions or comments? All those in favor? None opposed, that is carried. Are there any inquiries or items of new business, members of council? Then we'll move on to motions. There are no motions. Are there any notices of motion? Councillor Dubenow.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. I'd like to give notice of motion that we evaluate the policies of the Environmental Advisory Committee on town-owned property, and that would be returnable. I believe our next council meeting is March 25th.
Which is next Monday. You have to put that together and make sure the clerk has it within the next couple of days. Okay, perfect. Are there any other notices of motion? Then we'll go to consideration of bylaws. Does anyone wish any of the bylaws removed from the package? We just do. Okay, Councillor McDermott, you have first and second reading for the bylaw package.
Thank you, Your Worship. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Zanko, that the bylaw package containing 39-2019 to authorize the entry into a license agreement with the District School Board of Niagara for the construction and use of field event facilities within Ferndale Park. 40-2019 to amend business licensing bylaw number 21705 as amended. Transfer of delegation of licensing responsibilities for adult entertainment establishments to the Regional Municipality of Niagara. 41-2019 to enact an amendment to the official plan adopted by bylaw number 150-06 for the town of Fort Erie planning area, amendment number 42. Susan and Joseph Pacero owners, Craig Rowe, Upper Canada Consultant Agent, 2651 Nye Road. 42-2019 to amend zoning bylaw number 129-90, 2651 Nye Road, Craig Rowe, Upper Canada Consultants Agent, Susan and Joseph Pacero owners. 43-2019 to enact an amendment to the official plan adopted by bylaw number 150-06 for the town of Fort Erie planning area, amendment number 43. David and Christine Watson, owners, Michael Sullivan, agent, 615 Burley Road. 44-2019 to amend zoning bylaw number 129-90, 615 Burley Road, Michael Sullivan, agent, David and Christine Watson, owners. 45-2019 to amend bylaw number 29-2018 to establish the Community Healthcare Services and approve its term of reference. 46-2019 to authorize the entry into a development agreement with 2495365 Ontario Incorporated, Fernando Ping, 0 Catherine Street. And 47-2019 to establish development charges for the town of Fort Erie and to repeal bylaw number 43-2014 is given first and second reading.
All those in favor? None opposed, that is carried. That bylaw package is on the floor, but before we go to third and final reading, I think I'd like 39, 2019 19 removed from the package of third and final reading, because I've got a number of questions with respect to that bylaw. Are there any questions with respect to other bylaws in the package? Yeah, Councillor Butler.
Thank you. With respect to bylaw number 40-2019, giving the regional municipality of Niagara the opportunity to decide whether or not an adult entertainment establishment comes into the municipality, particularly in Fort Erie, would we have an opportunity to debate that and say no?
It would have to, first of all, be properly zoned. Mr. Brady, do we have any, we still have some, we had some properties that were zoned, but I don't know, do we have any still operating?
To you, I'm not sure if there are properties that are still operating, but the zoning of the facility is separate from the licensing of the facility. And it's my understanding that facilities are not licensed if they're not zoned properly.
Right, so do we have any properly zoned properties left in Fort Erie?
Yes, we do.
Okay, Councillor Butler.
Do we have an opportunity to change that zoning for some of those properties then, going forward?
Mr. Brady.
You can tell I'm very opposed
So
to
there's
those
two
kinds of things.
questions, there were two questions, I don't think we got an answer to the first one. If there's licensing of an operation, would the municipality have an opportunity for comment, number one, and number two? Can we change the zoning of any of the, I think there's 3 properties left.
In the past, the licensing was done by the police department, and to my knowledge, was no opportunity for any input at that point in time. The police simply licensed or not licensed as they saw fit. I'm not certain that the region will provide any further input than there was in the past. I'm not certain that they're contemplating doing that. On the second question, could we rezone the properties that currently are zoned for facilities? The simple answer to that question is yes, you can. Council would need to direct staff to do that, and we would need to go through an open public process, including public meetings associated with that.
And I would imagine the owners of the properties may not be supportive.
I suspect that's the case.
Okay. Councillor Butler?
Thank you, Your Worship. I'd like to defer 40-2019 to April.
Would that be the first regular council meeting in April?
Yes.
You have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Dubineau. That's so that you can obtain some answers to some of your concerns about consultation and what have you? Okay. Any questions any questions with respect to timing? All those in favor of the deferral motion for bylaw 40? None opposed, that is carried. But that would be, is that April the 8th, Madam Clerk? April 8th, yep. Okay,
April 23rd.
next regular council meeting?
April 25th is next.
Oh, no, the next regular council meeting in April, wouldn't that be April the 8th?
No, that's a committee, so it's committee, regular. We could have a special council that night if you wish.
But we've changed the schedule
So
effective
starting in
April. Okay, I'm gonna have to get my assistant to change my calendar.
I'll make sure all members of council get the changes.
Thank you. So you said that will be April the 23rd. Yeah, the 23rd is a Tuesday. Okay. All right. So then we are at third and final reading of the package less 39, 2019, which we'll deal with separately. And not 40 because it's just been deferred. Go
Moved by
ahead,
my-
Councillor Dubino.
Thank you, Your Worship. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Butler, that bylaws 41-2019, 42-2019, 43-2019, 44-2019, 45-2019, 46-2019, and 47-2019 are given third and final reading to be signed by the mayor and clerk under the corporate seal.
Are there any questions or comments? All those in favor? None opposed, that is carried. And then could you proceed with third and final reading for bylaw 39, please, Councillor Dubino?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Butler, that bylaw 30-2019 is given third and final reading to be signed by the mayor and clerk under the corporate seal.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments by members of council? So, Mr. Brady, are you able to deal with this?
Which matter, sir?
Mr. Walsh? This is the entry into a license agreement with DSBN, WU, and the lawyer's not here.
Between the two of us, we'll figure it out. Go ahead.
That's a scary proposition.
Yeah.
Maybe.
It's good.
And if you need help, Ms. Schofield is there. So the first question I had, and really it would be better answered by the lawyer, and that is, there's no definition of lands in here, so I presume then it means the whole park.
I can answer that. That's correct.
And just from what I'm gleaning here, the use of this park by the school could be every day during the school year for phys ed, for track and field, for tennis, for whatever. Is that correct?
We haven't, that's correct. We haven't put limitations on it.
Well, that causes me a little concern. The second item, paragraph 2B in the agreement, which is found at page 7 of the report, talks about storage of items. So there could be some storage that would be requested and could be approved by the municipality. Is that correct?
That's correct, but the intent is that for the vast majority of time, the equipment will be stored at the school.
So, and I'm anticipating that typically if there was going to be a track and field event, as an example, and it's a 2-day or 3-day event, they may want to store some stuff in the building on site.
That's correct.
Okay, and that would have to be with the approval of the municipality.
Correct.
The next item, which is paragraph 2C, talks about cancellation of use of the grounds. And at the end of that paragraph, it talks about if they've got an event scheduled, they're entitled to at least 48 hours notice, which would be quite impractical if there were weather-related situation that arose that made it unsafe to use the park. I suppose we're relying upon their good judgment not to use a dangerous park.
I'd concur with that.
Then 2D, which is the next paragraph. Seems to be along the same lines, only even greater. This is something that you're content with?
2D speaks to any permanent changes. So we don't know. We think we know what we want to do with the park for the next long number of years. but council's wishes may change.
Okay. Then 3D, which deals with, which is on the next page, which deals with ongoing maintenance and upkeep of not so much the lands, we own the lands, I understand that, the equipment. Why would we be responsible for maintaining their equipment, which is going to consist of a couple of concrete pads, but a wire mesh fencing, and whatever the javelin wire? Why would we be responsible for that? Because the only potential use that I can imagine will be by students, either as part of an organized event or their own training. I don't javelins around in training, other than during the day.
Well,
Why would
that's
we be-
correct. So this refers to normal maintenance we're going to undertake in the park, lawn mowing, general cleanup, etc. If there's garbage hanging on the fence, we'll pick it off. We don't expect the school board to come into our park to do very minor maintenance on their facilities. So this in our mind, this speaks to, and the DSBN's mind, speaks to minor maintenance that would occur around the facilities. If there's, and we hope we've covered it off in the covering memo, if there's maintenance that needs to occur to the equipment itself, such as the fence being torn, we'll call the school board and say there's damage to your equipment. You better come and fix it.
But this says that we're responsible for ongoing maintenance and upkeep.
There is in paragraph 3, there's of the covering memo. I know it's not part of the agreement, but there's an explanation by Sean and Ed as to how that will work. That's what I meant. Yeah, it's not in the agreement, it's in the memo.
Well, I understand that, but if they're going to be responsible for fixing damage to the cage, I think the agreement should say that. I don't think it should be our responsibility at all. They're not, I guess my concern is this. We're basically allowing the school unfettered use of this park every day during the school term between certain hours, which are basically the school and then after-school hours, to the exclusion of everyone else. It's a public park. And I understand that we don't want the public in a park when javelins are being thrown and discus are being thrown. I understand that. And I understand the benefit of us cooperating with the school board to make sure that their students, whether it's the public board or the separate board, make sure that their students have the ability to participate in these events. That I understand. But we're potentially putting ourselves in a position where the vast majority of the public who've paid for the park don't have access to the park, the playground, as an example, the area where the soccer field is, which is along Ferndale. It just seems unduly expansive, and gives a significant amount of usage to the school, which isn't paying us anything for it. And that doesn't bother me either, as long as it's reasonable. And I'm not sure that this is a reasonable scheme. Sorry that I'm bringing this up at this point. I'd mentioned it earlier to the CAO, and then he advised me he wasn't going to be here. But it's not my intention to put you on the spot, but I'm just not comfortable with the way this is set up. maybe I'm alone on this, and maybe I should just take a deep breath and get over it. But I'm not, I'm just not really all that comfortable with this arrangement.
Can I comment?
Absolutely.
Thank you. ESPN approached us during the construction of the high school when it was noted that their primary playing field would be artificial turf and not conducive to throwing events in a track and field meet. They do have wishes to undertake hosting such events, such as the Southern Ontario Secondary School Association Athletic Championship, SASA, and potentially OFSA. So they approached us. We agreed to bring this this type of agreement forward. With respect to the DSBN's exclusion of use of the park during these meets, there's going to be a lot of people there, and it is for the safety, and primarily the safety, of others that we believe they should be given exclusionary use of it. If we had a great demand of this park during daytime hours, the agreement would have been written to reflect that. But the DSBN has indicated approximately what they will be using it for, which is a few days in the spring and maybe the odd gym class. They will not be out there 200 days a year practicing throwing events. I can assure you of that. And I believe if it came to that, I think we would go back to the DSBN and say, you know what, your representations of what you wanted to do here have changed. We want to change the agreement. But it's not going to get to that.
Well, first of all, you can't assure us because you don't know. But what it does say, in even the memo, GFest will have priority use of the lands and equipment on regular school days between the hours of 7 a.m. and 5 p.m. That's pretty broad, and it's not that clearly defined in the agreement, but this memo is a clear intention of what we understood could be their draw. I agree with you. I don't think they're going to be there 200 days of the year. I just think that the agreement should specify when it is they're planning to be there. If they're not going to be there in December, let's knock December out, or have some provision that says if they want to use it, they have to give us notification except certain periods. So I fully expect that in April and May, maybe even June, they're going to want to use that because their athletes will be training, and they're going to want to train there. They'll have events, and that's the fantastic part about this track. They can have large-scale events, and the field events would by definition have to be over at Ferndale. I think that's great for the town. I think it's great for the students that live here as well. It's just that I don't want an agreement that's so broad that it actually could interfere with other users of the park. And maybe I'm overreacting, but my problem is I'm a lawyer, and I'm looking at this agreement, and it doesn't make me comfortable. So I have concerns about it. So what if we, Mr. Walsh, how imperative is it this be dealt with before April the 8th, which is the next committee meeting?
I think we've got time to adjust things if council sees fit.
It may not be. It may not be. I mean, maybe that I'm seeing things in here that aren't here. I'm concerned about things that I ought not to be concerned about. But I don't know. I'd feel better if we had that opportunity to make sure that these things are ironed out. Is it April the 8th, the next committee meeting? We could just put this on as a special council meeting to deal with the bylaw, if council's agreeable to putting it over. Go ahead, Councillor Duveneau.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm not a lawyer, so I'm going to just ask for this from a more straightforward perspective through you to Mr. Walsh. Level with us. How many days, like if you've had discussions with them about how often they're going to use it, like how often did they tell you they were going to use it?
Mr. Walsh?
They didn't give us, through you, Mr. Mayor, they didn't give us specific numbers of days. Track and field season is primarily in the spring. Everything is wrapped up by the first week of June. If I can relate to my children's experience in the throwing events, it's a couple of days a week for an hour in the afternoon. With respect to their hours of 7 a.m. to 5 p.m., that does allow them to begin setup for a major meet first thing in the morning. That's why that provision is in there. But for them to come in and take it over 5 days a week, I know it's not written in here, but it's just not going to happen. There's not the demand for it.
Councillor Dubinow?
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship, and through you to Mr. Walsh. I do appreciate that. I certainly know with the school year typically ends end of June, and the Ferndale Park is the location of a splash pad. So I think that with when we have this being used, which is during the school year, during the school day, I certainly understand the mayor's concerns from a legal standpoint and opening the door, but from a more straightforward standpoint of what they're capable of doing within that period of time, I mean, I don't think it would be that big of an issue, even if they wanted to make it an issue. Was what I'm trying to convey. So I'm okay with this. If if council feels that this needs to be postponed, I'm okay with that too. But I appreciate what Mr. Walsh had to say. Thank you.
Any other councillor? Councillor Luberts?
Yes, thank you very much, Mayor Redekop. Just a few questions. When the school board has these track and field meets, I can remember when I was in high school, we knew when the meets were coming. They were scheduled. And would you not schedule the use of the park according to the schedule of your meets, your track and field meets?
Mr. Walsh? I would assume that that's what you would do, but this is more than just the meets.
Yes, I know that, but I mean, Mr. Walsh says that, they're not going to be using it during the day. I remember when I was in high school, after school is when the track and field team did their training. So I'm assuming that they're going to be throwing their javelins and discus and all the other stuff on that park after school. And like you said, are there not other organizations out there that are using that park after school hours?
Well,
we're tying ourselves up, and I think this was brought up when this report came forward the first time.
It's only till 5 p.m., but that for all intents and purposes is when kids will be training afterwards. The agreement itself doesn't confine itself to uses for track and field. It also says physical education, so that there could be phys ed classes during part of the year where they're going to want to go over there, which is fine. I don't have a real problem with that. It's just that I have a problem with the broad scope of paragraph 2A, essentially. So, but if I'm alone, that's fine. I've had my chance to ask the questions. Well, then we need a motion to postpone it to April the 8th. Anybody willing to do that? Councillor Butler, seconder. Councillor Zanko. Not debatable. All those in favor of deferring this to April the 8th? Okay. Okay. All right. So that's carried. And then in the meantime, Mr. Walsh, perhaps we can have some clarification of whether that paragraph 2A can be tightened up. April 8th. Yeah, because it'll be a special council meeting on that night, just so we can deal with this bylaw. Okay, so then the next resolution relates to the confirmatory bylaw. Counselor Lubert, you have that. It's resolution number 7.
Yes, thank you very much, Mayor Redekop. Moved by myself and seconded by Councilor McDermott. That bylaw number 41, 2019, to confirm the actions of council at its special closed session meeting held on March 18, 2019, and its council and committee meeting held on March 18, 2019, and its special council meeting held on March 2018. March 18, 2019 is given first and second reading.
All those in favor? None opposed, that is carried. And the third and final reading, Counselor Zanko, you have that bylaw?
Yes, thank you.
Resolution.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor McDermott, that bylaw number 48-2019 is given third and final reading to be signed by the mayor and the clerk under the corporate seal.
Are there any questions or comments? All those in favor? None opposed, that is carried. That takes us to scheduling of meetings. We've already done that in council and committee. Are there any other meetings? Then, Councillor McDermott, you have the honors of adjourning.
Thanks, Your Worship. Moved by myself, seconded by Councilor Zanko, that council adjourns at 8:46 p.m. to reconvene into a special meeting of council on March 21st, 2019.
All those in favor? None opposed, that is carried. Thank you all.